soft palate, which extends from the posterior surface of the hard palate and ends freely towards the oropharynx. And here it will separate the nasopharynx area from the oropharynx area. It has a free end here, projection that is conical in shape, and it's called the uvula. Laterally, it continues on each side with the tongue. It continues towards the tongue side. This is what we call the palatoglossal arch. This is the conical shape of projection, which is the uvula, and it is in the middle of the soft palate. And here is again palatoglossal arch. So it is the anterior one, while the posterior one here, it's also related to the soft palate, and it's called the palatopharyngeus arch. Between these two arches lies the palatine fossa that inhouses the palatine tonsils. The skeleton of the soft palate mainly is formed by the palatine aponeurosis, and this palatine aponeurosis is attached to the posterior border, of course, of the hard palate. Talking about the soft palate muscles. As in the picture, tensor palati muscles and levator palati muscles are inserted into the aponeurosis, while arising from the aponeurosis, the palatoglossal and the palatopharyngeal muscles are arising from there. In the middle, related to this area in the middle, you can see musculus uvulae. Talking about tensor palati. So, it will arise from the base of the skull, then come toward the pterygoid hamulus. It makes a turn, and then it will become tendinous in nature, ligamentous in nature, to form the aponeurosis, the palatine aponeurosis. And over here it will come also from the base of the skull and the auditory tube to turn around the hamulus and become again tendinous in nature. And here how the palatine aponeurosis is formed. So this is tensor palati. Its action, when it's tense, it will tense the palatine aponeurosis and make the soft palate stretched. And also at the same time, it will open the auditory tube. The nerve supply is the mandibular division of the trigeminal through its branch to the medial pterygoid muscle. Now talking about the levator palati, its origin from the base of the skull and auditory tube to insert into the palatine aponeurosis. Its action, it will raise the soft palate and also again opens the auditory tube. The nerve supply is the pharyngeal plexus. The palatoglossus originates from the palatine aponeurosis and inserts into the sides of the tongue. The action, it will pull up the posterior part of the tongue and approximate the palatoglossal arches to constrict the oropharyngeal isthmus. The nerve supply is the pharyngeal plexus. While the palatopharyngeus muscle originates with two heads, one from the posterior border of the hard palate and the other from the palatine aponeurosis. It will insert into the lateral wall of the pharynx, then it inserts into the thyroid cartilage. Its action, of course, since it's inserted into the thyroid cartilage, so it has an action towards the larynx and the pharynx, depression and elevation, and also it will depress the soft palate. Its nerve supply is the pharyngeal plexus. For musculus uvuli, it will originate from the posterior nasal spine, which is this one, and insert into the mucous membrane of the uvula. The nerve supply is the pharyngeal plexus. As you can see, all the soft palate muscles are supplied by the pharyngeal plexus except for tensor palati, which is supplied by the mandibular division of the trigeminal. Nerve supply to the soft palate, it will be sensory and a motor. For the sensory, it's the lesser palatine nerve, which is a branch of the maxillary. Since it's coming from here, from the lesser palatine foramina, then it's the closest. That's why the lesser palatine nerve is the sensory supply. And as we've mentioned, it's a branch of the maxillary. Most of the soft palate will be supplied by this nerve, while the glossopharyngeal nerve will supply only a small portion of the palate, of the soft palate. While the motor, as we have mentioned, again I'm repeating, it's all supplied by the pharyngeal plexus except tensor palati, which is supplied by the mandibular of the trigeminal. What is the pharyngeal plexus? It is a nerve that is composed of three kinds of fibers, which are motor fibers, sensory fibers, and sympathetic. The motor is called the pharyngeal branch of the vagus, which contains fibers of the cranial root of the accessory. Since the vagus mostly is a sensory nerve, but it borrowed its fibers from the accessory, namely the cranial root of the accessory. So here are the motor fibers. While the sensory comes from the pharyngeal branch of the glossopharyngeal, while the sympathetic, it's a branch from the superior cervical ganglia. The blood supply to the soft palate is the lesser palatine artery, the ascending palatine artery, which is a branch of the facial, the palatine branch of the ascending pharyngeal artery, which comes from the external carotid. I hope this video was beneficial for everyone. If you have any questions, please contact us. Thank you.